Recently on one of my weekly live streams that I do every Monday night at 5 o'clock Pacific time, I talked about chain rule. But I don't want to just talk about the chain rule formula. What I really did in that video and what I'm going to do in this video is show you the portion of that live stream where I really kind of broke down not just the chain rule formula, but actually simplified it and put it in a way that's really easy to remember and easy to apply. So be sure to stick around to the end of the video because I'm really going to show you how you can apply the chain rule on your own in a super simple way so that it'll be easy for you to remember, and that should really help, as you do your homework or on a test type of situation. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the chain rule example, and I'll show you how to simplify the chain rule formula and apply it on your own. Before we go ahead and jump into the examples, I do just want to talk a little bit about chain rule in general. So like I mentioned, chain rule is one of those formulas on my Calculus 1 study guide. In this video though, I kind of just want to show you the method I use to remember it in a way that actually makes sense rather than talking about a formula. So just to kind of briefly discuss the formula real quick, basically if you're trying to find the derivative of some function that is a composite function, which basically means you have one function plugged into another function, and you're trying to find the derivative of this. Basically, you just have to do derivative of the outside, leave the inside alone, and then multiply that by the derivative of the inside. So that's essentially what the formula is, just this right here. But like I said, I really want to kind of take this approach from more of thinking about what this formula actually means rather than spending too much time talking about the formula itself. So I just kind of talked through that as I wrote out the formula, the way that I like to think about chain rule and remember it, because I think that makes way more sense than just memorizing a formula. So let me go ahead and say that again. Chain rule says that if you're trying to take the derivative of one function plugged into another function, in this case, it's written as f of g of x. Basically, that just means our function g is plugged into our function f. If you're trying to take the derivative of this, you just have to do derivative of the outside function. So that's what this f prime is. Leave the inside function alone. So you're going to leave whatever this inside function is as it is, just plugged into now the derivative of your outside function, and then you multiply that whole thing by the derivative of your inside function. So let's go ahead and take this example here, and we'll think about how to basically just find the derivative of this function, 10 to the 1 minus x squared, using chain rule. And again, I'm not going to talk too much about the formula itself. Let's really think about kind of the English way that I just said that and broke that down. So first thing you want to do when you're taking the derivative of a function using the chain rule is figure out what is your inside function and what is your outside function. Okay, so the easiest way to start with that is to first think about what is your inside function. Well, your inside function is usually going to be something that is within parentheses, within a power. There are other examples. Sometimes it may be within the numerator or denominator of a fraction. It could be a lot of different things. But usually, it's best to kind of think about it by looking first at where your variable appears. So in this case, we can see that our function is a function of x, right? We have an x right here. First, look to your variable. And what you would want to think about is if we were to actually plug in some value in for x here, if we just kind of work our way out in terms of order of operations, what would be the order of operations that we would apply if we plugged in some x value? Let's say we plug in x equals 5. How would we actually figure out what this whole thing equals? We would plug in 5 here. So we would do 5 squared, first of all, and then we would do 1 minus whatever 5 squared is, which would be 25. And then we would apply the fact that it's 10 raised up to that power. So basically we would first square it. Let's kind of just draw circles around basically each step of the way here. First we would square it. So that's our first step. Then working our way out a little bit further, we would then do 1 minus that thing. Okay. And then working our way out a little bit further, we would then do 10 raised up to that power. Now, Obviously, in this case, we have basically three kind of steps of this order of operations that we would be applying if we actually plugged in a number there. However, what we can do is we can just treat basically what we have in this second circle here, this green circle, as our inside function. So let's not worry about the part that has the x squared. Let's just think about the whole power. If we treat this whole power as our inside function, then, like I said, we could just treat the rest, or basically the fact that we have 10 raised up to that power, as our outside function. So let's go ahead and think about how that would apply to the chain rule. So like I said, chain rule just says we're going to take the derivative of the outside function. So once you have figured out what your inside function is, so in this case, we're going to say that our inside function is the power, the entire power, 1 minus x squared. To figure out your outside function, all you have to do is replace your entire inside function by just your variable. So we're going to replace this entire 1 minus x squared by x. And whatever you're left with, that is what you want to think of as your outside function. Okay, so once we've replaced our 1 minus x squared with x, we are just left with 10 to the x power. 10 to the x is going to be our outside function. 1 minus x squared is going to be the inside function. So like I said, a common example of figuring out your inside function is whatever's within a power is a pretty common example. And we knew that in this case, we wanted to treat the power as our inside function because that's where our variable x is. So if we're working order of operations wise, that's going to be the first thing that we're going to deal with is that power. So that power is going to be kind of the inside thing that we want to kind of pull out of this composite function in order to apply the chain rule. So back to chain rule. Chain rule says we're going to take the derivative of our outside function. So the derivative of 10 to the x. So first thing we need to figure out is what's the derivative of 10 to the x? Well, 10 to the x is, just a version of basically a very specific type of derivative, where if we have the derivative of some constant raised up to our x power, this is just going to be the natural log of that base, that constant base, times that base to the x power. So basically, it's this same thing, a to the x, and then we just multiply it by natural log of a. So this is another formula actually on my free Calculus 1 study guide. Again, if you want to check that out, the link is down in the description. But what this formula tells us is the derivative of 10 to the x is going to be natural log of 10 times 10 to the x, just using this formula here. Okay, so in terms of the chain rule, what we have to do is take, again, the derivative of the outside function, leave the inside function alone. So our inside function still needs to be plugged into the derivative of our outside function. So if our outside function is 10 to the x, the derivative of our outside function is going to be ln of 10 times 10 to the x. However, it's not just going to be 10 to the x, because what we need to do here is we need to leave our inside function alone. We need to leave our inside function still plugged in for x. So we're going to leave this 1 minus x squared as our inside function plugged in for x. So we're actually going to have derivative of the outside function, leave the inside function alone, is going to leave us with ln of 10 times 10 to the 1 minus x squared. And then, like I said before, we multiply that whole thing by the derivative of our inside function. Well, the derivative of our inside function, the derivative of 1 minus x squared, can be found just using the power rule. So the derivative of a constant 1 is 0. The derivative of negative x squared is going to be negative 2x. We would just bring the 2 down in front, multiply it by the minus sign, so negative 2, and then subtract 1 from the power. 2 minus 1 is just 1, which just leaves us with negative 2 times x. Okay, so another common mistake, and I'm sorry, I just realized I'm blocking part of that. There we go. So another common mistake here when you're applying this chain rule here, I said it when I was saying the formula, is you need to make sure to put parentheses around this whole piece here and this whole piece here, right? We take the derivative of the outside function, leave the inside function alone, and then multiply that whole thing in parentheses, make sure to always put parentheses around that, times the derivative of your inside function, which also needs to be all in parentheses. So that's a very common mistake that I see. And I would definitely just recommend making sure that you think of those two pieces as two entire pieces that need to be multiplied together. So that you know, if there is distributing to be done, you make sure to do that distribution there. So this is going to be the derivative of our original function. So this is going to be y prime is all this. Well, I hope you found that video helpful. If you did, please do me a favor, go ahead and hit that like button down below. It's a huge help to my channel so I can keep making more videos like this and so we can keep growing the Jake's Math Lessons community and learning together. If you want to keep learning about derivatives and other methods that you can use to find them, just go ahead and click on one of those videos over there. And I'll see you next time. Thanks.